Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto is obsessed with Tayuya, Naruto x Tayuya movie. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic MRAY4TW, link is in the description, also subscribe if you enjoy the video. Let's start the story. He was a failure, always had been. It had never quite hurt so much before. He thought of Sakura's begging, the tugging of his heartstrings when she cried to him, pleading for him to bring Sasuke back to the village. It wasn't just for her that he'd gone on the retrieval mission. Sasuke was his friend. The same fellow who just shoved a lightning-covered hand through his chest. All he had brought back were wounds and Sasuke's headband. Could even be argued that he only got that much because of Kikbi's influence. Saved his life too, although he should have won against Sasuke. Damn. Now he is gone. Naruto's bandaged hand felt his chest, gently prodding at the wound from Sasuke's Chidori. Kikbi was healing. Despite the nine-tailed fox's obvious distaste of him, it was at least a good thing that the healing it provided was involuntary. It being voluntary would be extraordinary, but Naruto didn't believe he was that lucky, especially given the recent affairs. The weather was just warm enough to make him start to sweat, and he was experienced enough to know that it would make the bandages, which he was mostly covered in beneath his clothes, become absolutely uncomfortable. Finally arriving at Ichiraku's ramen stand, he let himself be easily heard as he seated himself on a stool by the corner wall. It grabbed AM's attention a somewhat bubbly young woman who was the daughter of the owner of the said stand, who gave the boy a knowing look. Hiding from the nurses. He hoped she would allow him to stay there, out of the clear viewpoint should anyone pass by the stand, and sighed thankfully when she settled for a shrug. You know, you could just get one of your friends to pick up the food and bring it to you in the hospital. Good idea, but they're either gone from the village or right there with me in the hospital. Mission didn't go so well. Sasuke got away. She frowned slightly, she wasn't as emotionally invested as Naruto, so the matter wasn't enough to completely cloud her demeanor. So long as there's life, there's hope. You won't always win, but you won't always lose, either. You'll find him. He thought of telling her that in the village alone, one could hide and never be found. When he was younger, on occasion, he used to be able to almost spontaneously evade Anbu after pulling off a massive prank. Imagine an escape with prep time. Never mind the village itself or the distance between villages, much less the entire elemental nations. Sasuke, if he wanted to, could and would stay gone for good and never be found. He wanted to argue this with AM, but knew he shouldn't. This matter wasn't her business, but she was trying to encourage him, and any sort of optimism from anybody was welcome because his own was running low. Thanks. No problem. I know you don't give up, Naruto. The world's a pretty big place, so I know my 2 bits don't go far. Did she read minds? But simply making a choice not to give up means that you won't stop until you find him, so you eventually will. It's just a matter of not giving up until you've searched everywhere. This coming from the girl who gave up trying to count my money for ramen. He said cheekily. There was an instance when she pretended to give up on counting his payment for ramen, as what could only be described as loose change of the lowest value because of his poor finances. There was another customer in the stand at the time, one of the few who probably didn't know about the fox and the lad, but instead of counting out the boy's money, she took it as is. Counting it would reveal the money as underpayment, and she didn't want word getting out that not only were they feeding him, which cost them business, they also undercharged him. It'd only make the boy feel bad. Naruto still didn't know they didn't charge him full price just so he could have a hot meal. AM smiled sheepishly and shrugged. Aw, well, what can I say, Naruto? You're better than me. When you find him, make sure you slap him a couple of times for me, for making us all worry so much. Naruto's mood was slowly getting better, though made sluggish by his despair. Trying his best to hide it for AM's sake, who was trying to cheer him up, he gave her a flashing smiley. Yeah. I will, but lunch first. Let me get a miso, please. You got it. He was found 15 minutes later. To Naruto's relief, despite his intent to train, he was found before he could do so. At least it meant less trouble, although he was disappointed. Come to drag me back to the hospital, Hiro-senin. Keep up with that disrespect and I'd drag you back by your briefs, kid. Naruto blinks slowly. And you wonder why the name sticks. Forget about that. Let's get you back to where you belong, in bed getting rest and healing. In the meantime, I've got news. You know the sound 4? He asked rhetorically. You mean the sound 5? Naruto asked back, thinking of Kimimaro, the white-haired Odo ninja who'd stolen Sasuke's coffin right from under his and Shikamaru's noses. No, it's 4. That's their title. Anybody else is just extra. But that's beside the point. One of them survived. We've got her locked up and we'll soon get info from her about Orochimaru and where he has Sasuke. Hell, at least a direction we can start walking in while you're training. Hearing the whole sentence, Naruto cracked into a wide grin. That's great. Specifics would go a long way in order to locate his friend. So far as he knew, that was more than half the battle. Then he analyzed what Jiraiya said. The girl? He thought back to the sound 4. No, not the one with lipstick. That was a guy. There was a girl. Right after one freak stole Sasuke, the girl who had been behind him had jumped in front of him and punched him in the damn face. Naruto knew enough about momentum to know that it meant that she had skill, and Taijutsu wasn't even her main one. He also taunted her by slapping his ass as he left. He snickered. Thinking of it now was a bonus to the good news that he'd soon be able to know where Sasuke was. Almost wishing I could see that reaction one more time, Naruto mumbled. We'll get to leave soon, then. He asked Jiraiya excitedly, a noticeable bounce in his step as they continued on their way to the hospital. Depends, Jiraiya replied, thinking of Anko and Ibiki and their methods of persuasion. Not wishing to color Naruto in the grittier side of the ninja world just yet, he didn't mention that the girl would likely be tortured because of probable stubbornness. Who knew what Orochimaru's people were like? Depends on how quickly you heal. So you just get back to that hospital bed and allow the doctors and nurses to do their jobs. Yeah. Wonder if I could ask her myself about where Sasuke is. Jiraiya guffawed, imagining that the boy would fail immediately. No. Wouldn't work. Isn't that how we find out? By trying. The naivety was astounding. Regardless, Jiraiya wasn't sure how to answer and correct him. Should he tell the boy what was happening? They need a serious adult to ask her, not some goofy kid in bandages. This answer was enough to sour Naruto's disposition, who supposed that what the man said made sense. But he was not to be discouraged. He wanted to be close by to find out the info from the girl as soon as she answered. His impatience wouldn't allow any other way, and it didn't matter if he wasn't completely healed or not. He bet that Jiraiya only said so just because he knew that he, Naruto, would go immediately after Sasuke, whether he was fully healed or not. Okay. Hope you don't mean yourself. I'm a serious adult. You're adult rated. I wanna see her. Maybe, brat. Maybe. Just behave yourself and we'll see what happens. A poor promise, but Naruto really couldn't be trusted to behave himself. A test designed for failure that would get him barred from seeing the girl by code of honor, though the man had a feeling that Naruto would eventually see her anyway. Regardless, Jiraiya was now starting to doubt himself for letting Naruto become aware of the prisoner and reminded himself that he was cheering up the boy he'd been stuck in a funk for the better half of 2 weeks. The boy needed a win. Now, Jiraiya wasn't so sure if the boy had just gotten a win or if he had set him up for another loss. Jiraiya was impressed, and so was Shizune, the latter of whom had been worrying that the Uzumaki was the type of person to ignore common sense and hospital regulation to engage in unsafe habits that hampered their treatment. However, one of the two was also a bit uneasy about Naruto, who had faithfully stayed in the hospital, apparently eager to see the prisoner and learn about Sasuke's whereabouts. At first, he hadn't been apprehensive about this fact, but what made things end up this way was the fact that the prisoner hadn't said a word about Orochimaru, Sasuke, or any sort of location where they could be, besides what the leaf already knew. For however useful and damning that was, like her bitter insults and curses, she might, as well, have just stayed silent. There was no way that a direct worker of Orochimaru would only know the same amount of information as did the village hidden in the leaves. It was said that she was a member of the Sound 4, Orochimaru's bodyguards. Whatever the case, a man like that didn't need bodyguards unless you meant to call them fanatic human shields. Said shields were protecting the man, weren't they? They had to be wherever he was. She knew. Any new information was harder to get than blood from a stone. Said information being even remotely useful was even more difficult. Mind walking and mental techniques were a bust. Anko thought it was interference from the curse mark, despite it being sealed, or some other. She had been tortured. Nothing too serious that couldn't be healed by time. If this kept up, the torture and interrogations branch was going to start pulling teeth and cutting off toes. It had been held off by Tsunade at Jiraiya's request, just in case the Uzumaki did see her before they left for the training trip. Naruto was still innocent, in a manner of speaking. Naruto hoped to see the girl to ask her about where Sasuke was. To the Sannin, he was hoping to see a surly teenaged potty-mouthed retard who tried to bite out the throat of anyone who came too close. If you asked for Jiraiya's opinion, that was the worst kind of prisoner unless you counted zealots. The boy had already been cautioned about what she was like, but Naruto wasn't having any of it. He was either that naive about how toxic and cruel the ninja world could be, or simply purposefully ignorant and stubborn. This fact made Jiraiya unsure about his next course of action. He could just forbid Naruto from seeing her. His words meant as much as his emotions at the time. It didn't matter if he told Naruto he could on condition. Naruto's mentality was what concerned him. He was a good kid. He had a marvelous room for potential, and he needed it. Akatsuki was after him. Iwa would soon hate his guts when they found out who he was specifically. Might make a move. That was, as far as it went, strength-wise. Mentally, his intelligence was hampered because of his mindset. Naruto wasn't exactly fragile emotionally, but he was easily hurt. He acted on impulse and stupidly ignored warning signs. A breeze could make him deviate from plans and orders. As much as he liked the kid, he knew that having a better mindset of the ninja world shouldn't change who he was at his core. I won't always be around to hold his hand. He needs some exposure. He could expose him to more on the training trip, but this prisoner could offer some introduction in a controlled environment. Show the kid that the world wasn't all about bad guys with nameless faces who were weak enough to be beaten up to make himself feel big, like some cliched movie. They were real people, fighting by shadow and deception, and didn't care about him being a good person or not. It was then that Jiraiya realized that he'd already made his decision long ago. He did want Naruto to see the girl. He thought of telling the boy about her, made Tsunade'd hold off the extreme torture, and knew that he had to meet the image of what Orochimaru's people were like, what many ninjas were like. But Sasuke could end up becoming Naruto. The boy looked up from his bed, where he sat with his legs dangling off. Yeah. I won't lie to you. This girl is a real piece of work, and a lot of people are like her. What's worse is that she's a ninja. He refrained from saying real ninja. Naruto looked at the man, as if he was an idiot. Wow. She's a ninja. Haven't met one of those before. I'm serious, kid. You're a brawler. You beat people up until they end up in chains. This girl. She'd cut your throat while you sleep. The boy was befuddled, with trace amounts of horror. She doesn't seem like that. She punched me, once. She could have just used a kunai or something if she wanted to cut me. Jiraiya refrained from face-palming himself. She fought with a flute, Shikamaru said. Jinjutsus and whatnot, right. I'm saying that ninjas don't care about what's fair or not, or whether or not they're right or wrong. You're fresh, got stars in your eyes. The world's not going to ignore you because of that. In fact, it tries to snuff you out faster. Do you have any idea how many genins are killed every year? This was new to Naruto. Think about it. There's so many of you kids from the academy. How many Chuninins do you see? A lot. How many Chuninins? A lot. A lot less, you mean. If everyone could train their chakras, shouldn't all Chuninins eventually make Chunin? And shouldn't all Genin eventually make Chuninins? And if that was the case, then why should more Genins train to join the ranks? Shouldn't all the living ninjas be enough to keep the village stable? This was a hard fact that Naruto was made to swallow dry. He already knew that people died in this line of work. To hear what Jiraiya was saying, it was as if he was telling him that he was only lucky, as if the work and training he'd done to get this far hardly mattered. Then why are you saying she's a ninja, as if I'm not? Because of your mindset, kid. I've beaten almost everyone I've fought. So that didn't matter. If you could be more subtle than a cow wearing a dozen bells, you could do better. If you were more careful, you wouldn't get hurt as often. If you were smarter, you'd know when to cut your losses. Naruto scowled. Are you telling me to forget about Sasuke? All things considered, I am. That girl's just about your age. Embarrassed you by punching you? And who are you? A guy who likes going bare-knuckled. She's not even a Taijutsu user, like your friend Lee. And what about Haku? And Kamimuro? How many hits have you taken that would have killed you or crippled you if it wasn't for the fox? How many hits have your clones taken for you? How many times have you rushed into a fight without observing your enemy first, or at least with better tactics than just trying to surround them with shadow clones? Naruto didn't answer the man's rhetoric. Instead, he asked something else. And what? You think you want me to change just by meeting some girl? And you think that changing me would be better? If it can even happen? Jiraiya had to consciously think about not laughing at the boy's ignorance. You thought that you could find out about where Sasuke was just by asking her. Just so you know, she's been tortured and she hasn't said a thing about it. Naruto was shocked. Torture? The Leaf does that kind of twisted crap. Of course. What did you think we did, tickle you until you tell? She's been tortured, but not that badly yet. You're going to see her, and you're going to talk to her like you said. All the folks down there will get a laugh out of that. Feel free to do anything you want. Just make sure you tell her that we're going to cut off body parts next week if she doesn't comply. The boy was at a complete loss. But he choked on his words. I thought we were better than that. We're just as bad as everyone else. You don't have to change the way you are, cause I think you're a good kid. However, as much as I like the way you are, I'd sleep better at night knowing that you're at least aware of how bad the world can be. Naruto only thought of how bad this girl could be and why Jiraiya could class it as normal. If that was what the world was like, then he had to find some way to fix it. Unsurprisingly, he also thought of whether there was some way to save the girl from the torture. to save her from the torture, then he without said torture had to convince this enemy Kunoichi to help him find Sasuke. "What's her name?" he asked, speaking ahead of what his mind was thinking. "Tayuya." After arriving, it occurred to Naruto everything about the torture and interrogations department made sense. He'd never been to it specifically, but now knowing that it was a department on the same grounds as the prison followed basic logic. This prison was underground, but the entrance was through a processing facility, which was a simple one-story base building located not too far from the Uchiha compound. Naruto was savvy enough to recall being taught that the Uchiha used to be the police force for Konoha, so having said police force close by would make things simpler for both branches of the law to work together, especially since they relied on one another. "So this place, this prison, is some kin to dungeon," he mumbled as he stared at the unassuming building. Having learned what this building was, he now realized why he never took to it. It always put him off, like he didn't belong. It was the same kind of feeling he got from people in the village, but getting it from a building was all the more bizarre. But wouldn't that mean that there were people who did belong here? In this underground prison? It was in the Leaf's best interest. Out of sight, away from the brightness that the village had, away from the possibility of affecting everyone's happiness. So this was a place of misery then, right? If that was the case, then there were a few rough times in his childhood when he ought to have fit in here. Allowed through the gates by Ichnin, who claimed to have been expecting him, told him to enter the building. Upon doing so, a woman had him sign his name on a scroll, his entry time, and write his reasons for coming. He also had to remove his weapons and turn them over for the woman to seal away. He'd get them back later. "Jiraiya told us that you were coming. He did most of the paperwork. Just need to know if you have anything to declare." "Declare? Like what?" "If you're in possession of anything else that we should be aware of," the woman stated sternly, pointing his attention to a chart that showed banned items. "You'll be searched, and if we find anything you haven't told us about, you're just going to end up in prison." Naruto swallowed dryly, feeling nervous now for no reason. What if they find some extra kunai on me or something? "I think I gave them everything." He thought sounded ridiculous, but the boy had once found a shuriken on the inside of his cuffs after a sparring session, without a clue as to how it got there. "I don't have anything else. But if you find anything, you can keep it." The woman looked down her nose at the boy, as if he'd just asked for her blessing to date her cat. "Really?" she said. He stuttered. "I'm not planning anything, I swear, but sometimes I'm just really unlucky and things happen." She just stared at him as he continued to put more of his foot into his mouth. "I just came to ask Tayuya some questions. If you have to search me, just do it. I'll be quiet." "Can you really?" she grumbled as she motioned for a guard to take Naruto to another room for him to be searched. "This kid can't even talk to me properly, but he wants to talk to the Redeed." Kami helped him. Buzzing for a pair of guards, she informed them to fetch Tayuya and bring her up to the interrogations room. It was up to the woman's discretion to make such a decision, and if it were anyone else, they'd be sent down into the lower levels to see the prisoner, as per regulation, under close guard and such. The kid obviously would shit his pants being harassed by the hardened prisoners in the cells the whole time and create a disturbance. Well, with its share of risks, it'd be better to bring the girl up instead, under her usual seals of course. It'd be considered a break from her cell, but it was more for Naruto's sake than for hers. An alert seal was activated, informing the Anubis in and around the facility to let them know that a prisoner was being brought up. Better safe than sorry. Time skip. After a strip search that Naruto would rather forget sooner than later, he was taken to a room with only a single door and a one-way glass pane. No ventilation. No fans, no air conditioning. The only things in the Spartan room were a metal table and the two chairs on either side, all welded to the floor. He took a seat in one. There was a weird iron circle in the ground in front of him, though, like a stake anchored. He tapped it with his foot. It was solid. He wondered what it was for. He waited for a few minutes. Then a few more. Then for 10 minutes. 15. Finally, the door opened to admit two ninjas, along with a familiar-looking red-headed girl between them, her wrists and ankles in chains. She limped on her entry, using crutches. Her legs were broken, it seemed, but her face was marred with a heavy scowl, as if she'd been interrupted in the middle of something important. One of the ninjas informed Naruto that he was in the wrong chair. Wrong chair? The chains go into the iron ring, Dumbus, the girl blurted. Now move. He would have moved instantly if it had been one of the guards who told him, but it had been the prisoner. To not admit she was right would make him look stupid, and to do, as she said, would make him lose an advantage. A psychological advantage or edge or something like that, one of those things that Kakashi-sensei would talk about occasionally. He took his sweet time moving, mumbling something about first time just loud enough to hear. He didn't know that he didn't even have a psychological advantage in the first place. Once he was seated, the ninja secured her to her seat, her ankle chains to the floor ring, and her arms to the table legs. She still had enough length to move her arms, but not without some effort, and jangling them the whole time. The ninjas took some care with her leg chains, however. It was done in such a way as to not aggravate her injury, while still treating her the way they would any other prisoner. "How long will you be with her?" one of them queried. He had a choice. He was about to say 10 minutes, but he decided against it. 1 hour, he said shakily, wondering if it was acceptable. "Are you sure?" "Why yes." It almost sounded like he was asking a question. "The door will be locked, and you'll be watched through the window. If you need anything, just ask." "Thanks." He didn't know how to ask, what to ask for, and if he actually should. He only came here to ask for Sasuke's whereabouts. The ninjas left him soon enough, locking the door behind them. He reminded himself that they were watching through the glass. Turning his attention away from the glass and to the girl who was looking at him expectantly, he observed the girl. Bland expression. Dirt on her cheek. Tan loose-fitting shirt and pants. Her red hair would probably look great if it were combed, but it just looked like a mess at the moment, what with the way it fell into her face, around her shoulders, and up her back. Focus. He had to get right to it. "Where's Sasuke?" he demanded. Maybe an hour was too much to ask for. "He's up Akage's ass." "Good luck finding out which one," she said nonchalantly with a small yawn. "I'm serious." "I'm serious," she mocked. "Kami, I must be getting pranked or some other stupid shit. Like hell is this real?" "Where's Sasuke?" Naruto demanded, his voice getting louder, yet she remained unruffled. "You think I'm here to play games?" "Probably." That withering reply took the wind out of Naruto's sails immediately. Jiraiya was right. How was he going to get her to talk? Torture her? That was happening already. Worse was already waiting for her. What should he do? Threaten her with the news that Hirosenin gave him? She knew that already. Could he bribe her? What about befriending her, like Haku? Haku was an enemy at one point. And what about Gaara? He stared at her. She was intimidating, that was certain. He then thought of the two enemies he'd fought before, the both of them who'd become his friends. She was probably rough, but definitely not as tough as they were. "You've got a dirty mouth." She lightly slapped her cheek. "Yeah, it's your fault. Should have asked for someone else. You don't need this much mouth for such a small dick." Naruto blushed hotly. "Huh? What does that mean?" "If you're done wasting my time, I want to go back to my cell. Feels better lying down on the cot than sitting. Easier on the legs." "You can go back faster if you tell me where Sasuke is," Naruto pressed, yet only sounding like a repetitive reminder. "I've had bitch pull all my bones out of joint before she left me like a limp noodle on the ground for 3 whole days, before she jammed them back into their sockets last night. I starved that long, and when I was to get dinner, she accidentally spilled the scalding soup all over me. And today, what do I get? Some stupid kid wants to interrogate me. Do you expect me to betray Orochimaru just by answering your fucking question? What are you, 5? He didn't know how to do that, or if he ought to. But you won't tell me, or her, whoever she is. You'll stay here, living in a hole in the ground. You must like it here. Been jailed in worse places," she said with a grin, as if she was proud of the fact. "Heard I was getting moved to the strict correctional facility. Should be further underground," bitch said. Naruto felt testy. Bitch. The word sounded unnatural in his mouth. Enko. Naruto was sure that he'd heard that name before. He went blue in the face when he recalled the woman who was the proctor for the most detestable part of the Chunin exams, the same who'd cut and licked his cheek. Tayuya merely looked at the boy in bemusement. "Seems you know her. Now you know who your competition is when it comes to trying to wring information out of me. Since that's the case, why don't you just fuck off back to wherever you came from so I can go back to bed?" Maybe he could bribe her. "I don't know how to torture people, and I don't want to. Is there anything you'd want if you tell me where Sasuke would be? I want out of this prison." They both knew that it wasn't going to happen. Then why say it? Simple. She was never going to tell him where Sasuke was. She seemed comfortable, despite the torture. Her mental fortitude was a wall, covered in abrasive razors. It was nothing to scoff at, and it made her extremely difficult to talk to. If she was the silent type, Naruto wasn't sure if that would have been easier or harder. "My teacher said to tell you that they're going to start cutting off body parts next week," he stated, as plainly as he could. She raised an eyebrow. "Finally, something actually worth being called torture. I was wondering what was taking you all so long." Naruto stared at her in disbelief. "Everyone's got some weird torture," she explained patiently enough, considering the situation. "Kumo uses electricity, the mist dips you into a huge boiling pot inch by inch. Meanwhile, the sand puts you in a tiny grave to break your mind, and while I could be wrong, I heard that I was shoved stone straight up your ass. Cutting off parts, though. Doesn't sound very original." I think you all have much worse. Still, don't mind if you take off the legs. Broken so bad, I've got no more use for him. But let me keep my hands. Need those to pass the time. He couldn't imagine the Leaf doing anything worse. Just hearing about torture, in and of itself, was bad enough. To cut off body parts, that was enough to make him want to throw up. Who'd do that? Anko? Someone else? Were they paid? Did they do this so often that it was second nature to them? Did they like doing it? He stalled, not knowing what to ask about, passing the time. The pleasure myself, piss for brains. It occurred to the lad that he hadn't told her his name. It's Naruto, Tayuya. She pointed at his hair with a chin nod. With hair like that with the stupidity to match, it's piss for brains. Deal with it. He wondered how long it had been since they started talking. He hadn't been keeping track. He thought of asking, but decided not to. He didn't want to let her think that she scared him off. Why are you so stubborn? If you got captured by the enemy and had information that your damn jailers wanted, would you tell them? No. He admitted slowly. So why should I do anything different? Because you're doing it for Orochimaru and he's not a good guy. That's a stupidly black and white label. So what are you and the rest of the Leaf? The good guys? She spat. I wouldn't call you that. You're just all pussies for not doing what you should so that you can get what you want. The boy folded his arms, becoming defiant. But we did what we had to, and despite everything you did, you're the ones who lost, and everyone else who was with you died. Doesn't matter if my idiot teammates died or lived. Don't give me that bullshit. Fact is, Sasuke made it to Orochimaru. Your loss. You don't care if they lived or died. Naruto felt himself become upset. Weren't they your comrades? Your friends? Didn't even like them. Comrades, maybe, but you're only as useful as your success. If you don't succeed in your mission, then you're not useful. The same goes for me, the same goes for you. Look, piss for brains, you must be sheltered or something, and you're not going to last long thinking like that. Here's a piece of advice. You'll get by easier thinking of everyone as a kunai. There's a lot of them, so that makes their value low. Useful for maybe one or two things, and in the end, they'll stab you in the back. She sounded like Jiraiya, but more cynical. What she said stirred up something about what the man had said. Have you ever killed someone while they were sleeping? Like, cut their throat? Not my style, but yeah, I have. What's it matter? You haven't. He didn't answer. He just sat there. He wondered how he could get through to her. Now, the task felt more like trying to convince her that things weren't the way she described and ought not to be, rather than trying to find out about Sasuke. Not everyone's the same. None of us would cut your throat in your sleep. And if you think that everyone should, then you're just as wrong as everyone else who thinks that way. Sounds like you're projecting on me, golden boy. You'll know soon enough when someone cuts your throat in your sleep. You had a chance to cut my throat when we fought. She threw him a don't care one way or another look. I thought you looked familiar the second I saw you. You're the one who chased after Kimimaro. Thought you died. You got lucky. You had a chance to cut my throat, Naruto repeated, but you didn't. You only punched me. For what it's worth, I should have jammed the end of my flute into your windpipe and opened it up like a mikan. Wouldn't be here to bother me now. Naruto gritted his teeth. She talked big, that much was certain. What's worse, it was starting to feel like she enjoyed bantering and crushing his outlook with her so-called maturity. You guys didn't succeed in your mission. And the Leaf didn't fail either. I did. You think you won just because Sasuke just conveniently went in the same direction that you guys were going. The win's a win. For all he had said, for all her retorts, he'd gotten no information of use. What's it gonna take for you to tell me where Sasuke is? I get to leave. Told you already. Since that's clearly not gonna happen, you might as well kill me. I bet we could find Sasuke without your help. She gave him a sarcastic double thumbs up. Sure you will. Definitely not before Orochimaru takes his body, though. She had no idea that he knew that Orochimaru was after Sasuke for this purpose. But why reveal it? To pressure him. He wasn't the one getting interrogated. No wait. Jiraiya said that he knew about this already. The Leaf learned about his body swapping technique during the crush when he fought the Sandaime. But that didn't warrant her attack on him, saying that Orochimaru was going to take Sasuke's body. She just wanted to see him squirm, knowing that Sasuke was important to him. She wore a smirk like she invented it. She knew she had him cornered. Naruto clenched and unclenched his fists. He wanted to punch her so badly, girl or not, in chains or not. She was his age, he was sure. What could have happened to her to make her be like this? He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. I hate your guts, Tayuya. Hate your guts too, piss for brains. You can kindly fuck off and not come back. I've been in worse prisons, been on harder missions, gone through worse hells. This place is a walk in the park. Like said Park, you're just the annoying asshole in it who's just sitting and watching everyone like a damn fish, knowing full well he's not wanted. She knew the kind of person she meant, what kind of description it fit. Unfortunately, it hurt him differently, and whatever hurt that must have shown made the girl believe that she'd finally succeeded in rupturing his cracks. I'll never talk, and I'll never break. Sasuke's dead. Get over it. He thought of something awful. He imagined Tayuya with a hidden leaf headband, captured by Orochimaru. Despite how much he didn't want to admit it out loud, he felt like he had to. If you were my friend, even if you were only from this village, still the way you are now, it wouldn't matter to me. I'd do anything to save you from Orochimaru. She was quiet. She recalled what the other boy had said when they fought. I wouldn't ask for your shitty help, considering your failure rate. Sasuke didn't ask either. But I'm gonna save him. He didn't ask to be saved, moron. He's acting of his own free will. Just let it be, she said with a chuckle. Doesn't matter if 1,000 ninjas tear apart the elemental nations in the search. You won't find him, and you couldn't do anything if you did. Naruto's hardened blue eyes could freeze her in place. It could only be me, and that's okay. Besides, that's the difference between us and between you and Sasuke. I'll save him. But no one's coming to save you. You're just a kunai to Orochimaru, and he has plenty more. He got up. He moved to the window and announced that he was leaving, whereupon the door was opened by the ninjas from the outside. Before he made his exit, he addressed the enemy Kunoichi once more. She was stoic, but gave off a somewhat dejected aura. He noticed the weakness, and his glare softened. I'll see you tomorrow. He'd slept well, picking up the pieces of his ego and innocence. When he woke up at around 4 in the morning, he thought about Tayuya. She hadn't said anything that could be used to find Sasuke, not an answer, not a hint or sliver of implication. She just looked him dead in the eye and insulted him. When it wasn't an insult, it was a complaint. Maybe it was how she coped with being jailed. The fox in him wasn't exactly the friendliest thing either. People in jail were bound to be cranky, he guessed. What was different, however, were their experiences. She'd been jailed before. She said so. She also knew a lot about them. How could she at his age, having been jailed before, be so effective in combat and be so solid while being in jail with 2 broken legs, not to mention being tortured? He wondered if he could be like that. He supposed that he admired her a bit. He didn't envy her experiences or methods in being so, but he now had an idea of what Jiraiya meant. If only she didn't insult him with nearly every other word and was more forthcoming with what he wanted to hear, she'd be more tolerable. Have to find Sasuke, he muttered to himself. Tayuya knows where he is. She knows exactly where he is. Even if she doesn't, she knows all of the places where I can look. He thought of Tayuya leaving the village, held by Orochimaru. No one's coming to save you, he'd said. He'd said it, in fact, something that he believed. If she were a friend of his, he would try to save her. But she wasn't. Worse yet, she was an enemy. Her face floated in front of him in memory. When he'd said that nobody was coming for her, she became deflated, subdued. Did she like her teammates, her comrades, her should have been friends? No. When she was told that they died, she didn't care. When Kamimuro showed up, she was instead alarmed. When he spoke to her, whatever he said, she became frightened. So, she wasn't fond of them. At least one of them scared her. Then why did the statement hurt her? Like how she seemed to have no care about anyone, was it the same way in which no one cared for her at all in return? He was getting muddled over by an enemy Kunoichi. But what kind of life did she lead to be jailed at such a young age? What kind of life did she lead that would make her think that people were like? What kind of life would make her acknowledge that no one would come for her? Something occurred to Naruto, something to derail a vital piece of the logic. Do they know that you're alive? He whispered. He didn't even know until Jiraiya told him. The man himself could tell him the answer, too. I'm Skip. She limped in on her crutches again, and it was even more pathetic looking this time. Tayuya had a feeling that it was the blonde when she was brought up from the dungeon at the same time as his previous visit. Honestly, she thought he wouldn't come back, but there he was, waiting in the interrogation room. You're in the right chair this time. Always a good sign when a dunce doesn't keep making the same mistake. Gonna tell me where Sasuke is? She shook her head as she approached her chair painfully. Guess you don't learn after all. Could have at least let me sit down before you threw all that bullshit at me so early in the morning. He gazed at her quietly as he leaned back in his chair before staring at the ceiling. The boy waited patiently as the ninjas locked her into place with a hook and table legs before taking their leave. An hour, he said as they left, not waiting for them to ask. Pretty short for a conjugal visit. Don't you need to romance me first? Or are you gonna cut it even shorter like you did yesterday? He didn't know what a conjugal visit was, but the subsequent statement gave him an idea of what it meant. No thanks, he said, I like someone else. You mean Sasuke? Suspected as much. But the boy blushed in embarrassment, worsened by the implications of what had taken place in the academy. No. He roared, I don't go that way. It's a girl. She leaned forward, feigning interest, and propped her head with her hand against the table. Oh? Someone I know? He fidgeted, and his response was unforthcoming. You could have answered one way or another, but you took too long. Let me guess. It's not going the way you want, or you would have told me to mind my own business, or another straight answer. So it's complicated. Or it's one-sided. We're not talking about me. We're trying to find out where Sasuke is. We're both wasting midem, more like. But she trailed off, smirking all the while. You've got this struck dog look to you. Bet she hits you. He was stumped. Poor piss for brains-chan. What am I to do with you? Naruto bit the inside of his lips so hard that he drew blood in his effort to refocus himself. She was deflecting and trying to hurt him. He must have hurt something of hers yesterday, so she was trying to find and attack his cracks and faults today in reprisal. When next he spoke, Tayuya noticed a few red streaks between the lines of his teeth. Coupling that and his whisker marks, he looked like an animal, and she tried to ignore it. None of your friends or comrades knows you're alive. Were you waiting on them to save you? She snorted. Ha. Fuck no. They're dead anyway, like you said. What about the ones from Odo? Isn't that a village? It's the village hidden in the sound, isn't it? Sure. But no one's coming for me, anyway. Got no more use for me. They're not going to risk manpower just to break half a Kunoichi out of jail. He guessed that she was referencing her badly broken legs. The fact that she could even balance on the mangled things whilst on crutches was a testament to the girl's pain tolerance and rigid character. So where is the village hidden in the sound? Nice try, asshole. Not telling. Damn it. I don't get you at all, Tayuya. You don't believe that anyone's coming for you and that you don't have any use for them. You've got no hope to escape even if you had help, and you don't care if you're betraying them. But you still won't tell us where Sasuke is. I'm only doing this for my own interest. You don't have any interest. Naruto retorted. You don't care if you tell us or not, but you won't. What if I find it entertaining? She said, tossing it as a suggestion. You like getting tortured. I'm hoping to at least die from blood loss or shock, cause you're not getting anything from me. Would be great just to spite you. I'd die with a smile on my face. That was a terrible thing to allow to happen to herself, just to upset him. You won't die. He thought about Tsunade and how she was lauded as the best medical ninja in all the nations. A frightful thought made itself known. Granny Tsunade wouldn't let you die since your information is that important. You live, and even if the torture kills you, I bet that even she could bring you back. The frightful part of the thought became clear. And if you had the chance, wouldn't you want to live? Nah. Can't be bothered. Not for the first time, he felt zero intimidation from the girl. Instead, he felt pity. You just want to die. To be honest, I feel kinda sorry for you. She stared at the boy with utter distaste. Her face ranged a large span of emotions thereafter, as if she was unsure of how to respond, but eventually settled for acid. He ignored it. You want to get tortured so you can die. Then why did you say you'd talk if we released you? I'd do it myself. None of that pussyfooting around the bush. I have this suicide. But my chakras sealed off. They've got this friggin' seal on me that suppresses the urge to maim and or kill yourself. You lot are handy with seals, but a real pain in the ass, honestly. What if you talk and then you'd be killed? I thought to myself, she grumbled with an odd air of hope. There's an old geezer down in the dungeon. He got moved out of the correctional facility back here because of his advanced age. A fucking life imprisonment, like who does that? Just off the bastard, it's easier, cheaper. But this shitty pacifistic village makes me want to throw up. What's the purpose of keeping him around? You feed him, shower him, and put clothes on his back. It's just a waste of time and money. And then there's number 17. Sick bastard jacks off every chance he gets, and I heard he had the hots for kids. Have to wonder why the village keeps them around. Maybe the older guy wanted life in prison instead of being executed, Naruto pitched. She made a so-so motion with her hand. Okay. You wanna die. What if he felt unsure, got you executed after you tell me where Sasuke is? This got the prisoner to laugh wholeheartedly, and while Naruto appreciated it, he would have also smiled with her if he had made a joke. It wasn't a laughing matter for many reasons. You? Gonna have me executed? Doubt it. A pussy at that. Can't do it yourself. You can't even make anyone do it for you. That much was true. It'd be easier on my conscience if I say that it's something you wanted, he admitted. The girl was confused. Say it. What do you mean? The Hokage. Or Anko-san, maybe. They'd take care of it. He felt ill. If he did this, wouldn't it make him responsible for her death? You're hilarious, piss for brains. Like you could wrangle that. You don't have that kind of authority. Just another green genin. haven't even cut your first throat. But I'm here, aren't I? Naruto defended. I'm just a what? Green genin, whatever that means. I'm here in the interrogations room with you. Things just seem to happen for me, don't they? He said, as levelly as he could. It was a good bluff, and by all indicators, it was easily believable. I have good relations with the Hokage, and Jiraiya of the Sannin got me sitting here because I wanted to. Relations, eh? Connections. She was impressed, but she didn't let it show. Orochimaru was just one of the Sannin. Knowing that two of his equal peers, both of which were apparently backing the boy, made it feel like he had one-upped her. She leaned forward towards him, as far as the chains would allow. They jangled heavily, the noise slightly echoing about the room. I tell you where to find Sasuke, and you get me killed. Preferably painlessly and humanely. Naruto shook his head. Didn't even think you knew that word. Again, she laughed, and this time, it was followed by a smile. Again, it was appreciated. Again, he didn't reciprocate. He was worried, concerned, and frustrated. But you would, right? Of course you would, she said at last, after her fit, because that's all your entire pathetic village is good for. Being too damn humane. They were quiet for a while after this. He gazed at her in the silence, and she stared back. Why do you want to die? What do you care? You got an extra purpose in your pockets that you can loan me. I was left for dead, my curse mark sealed, and Orochimaru doesn't care what happens to me, especially since he's got his hands on a new boy toy. I'm powerless. All I've got are two fucked up legs, torture to look forward to, and nothing but free time to figure out how to wring the nasty fapper's scrawny neck in the cell next to mine. The fucker jacks off faster than Orochi's hand seals whenever bitch is making my life miserable. You ought to hear him, gotta wonder how it hasn't fallen off yet. My life's utter shit. I should have died back in the forest. He couldn't give her purpose, or even tell her that he didn't want her to die. What if he got Tsunade to heal her legs? A step in the right direction. But what about Sasuke? He was here to find out how to save Sasuke, not help an enemy Kunoichi. His face fell. She cocked her head questioningly and leaned back in her chair. Her chains jangled again with the movement, reminding him that she was a prisoner. What's wrong, piss for brains? Got no goody two-shoes reply. No motivational speech about how I shouldn't be depressed. Or maybe you're actually thinking, hey, she's right. He thought that she was sad. Good morning, Tayuya-chan. Good morning, masochistic fuck, she greeted Fo brightly as she settled in as best she could while the guards anchored her chains and checked her seals before they left. Naruto rubbed his nose bridge, weary of her habit of using insults instead of his name. Naruto, he reminded her. But how often you see me, you must not really care. Betcha you even like it too. What about the girl? Does she know you're seeing another girl? Now I'm certain that she hits you. Slow to learn too. Your boyfriend tried to kill you and you're still hounding after him for more punishment. You masochistic fuck. Naruto, he repeated. He could never imagine a name to address her that was hurtful, so he stuck to her name. A shame she wouldn't use his. How about golden, piss for brains? About the same color as a couple of urines in a toilet. Ought to hurt your feelings less. Not acknowledging the resigned look on his face, she continued. Don't like golden? Fine. How about whiskers? His face perked up somewhat. It didn't sound that bad. It was good bait and she knew she had him. Is that a nickname? Sure. A nickname. Reminds me of the cat we had back in Odo. Tumbling about, caught the rats, tried to steal from pots. But I sneezed a lot, cause I'm allergic. Her face fell into a scowl. You're always around, upsetting me. Reminds me of how much I fucking hate cats. It got into my room and ate my rations. Honestly, I felt a little happy when I kicked a little shit until it vomited and died. Looks and innocence can only get you so far. Stick your nose where it doesn't belong, you get put down. She looked at him intently. Understand. She syllables. He did not answer. Understand. She repeated, talking down to him as if he was a toddler. I'm asking to make sure because you're slower than a snail. You kicked a cat to death. He deadpanned. She nodded. You're sick. And you want a humane death. She chuckled. Ironic. But it's not like the cat was humane. I mean human. But you're missing the point, Whiskers, she said pointedly. The boy shook his head. Naruto. She wasn't going to budge, and for the first time, it seemed that he wouldn't either. She wouldn't defer to him. Today was different, however. He carried himself differently. He didn't have this green genin aura like he usually did. After observing him long enough, she finally realized why, and it struck a strange chord in her. You're leaving the village soon, aren't you? Yeah. I'm going on a training trip tomorrow. He paused, as if he was trying to consider how much he could tell her, besides the few shreds he'd already let slip. With Hiro Sennin. I'll be gone for a few years. Should work out. I got some training from Irachi too, so you can see that it makes a difference. She thought of how he'd been coming by every day for a week. He suddenly showed up, but now he was going to be absent just as suddenly, and some part of her, strangely, was going to miss him. But you couldn't train here. Nah. Gonna search for Sasuke in the meantime. She swore. For fuck's sakes, I told you to leave him alone. Just do yourself a favor and at least just focus on your training. I've got 3 years to find him, huh? He mumbled. Guess I could train for 2.5. Spend the last 6 months tracking him. Leave him alone. Completely. Is that advice? It's common sense. If you were less hard-headed with more open ears, you'd have better odds at living longer. At least acknowledge the fact that he tried to kill you just to get away. Do you think he's gonna walk back with you, holding hands? Besides, there's the fact that anyone who doesn't want a part of a village usually runs away without looking back. He wanted out, so at least respect that and leave him alone. Already made up my mind to drag him back. What's the matter, are you concerned about my safety? I dunno. She shrugged. She honestly didn't know. I thought you'd want me to die. Said I reminded you of how much you hate cats, so much that you kicked one to death. Sounds like you want to kick me to death too. His gaze fell to where her legs would be under the table. If you could. You won't have to worry about me bothering you anymore, so there's that. Whatever. Just tell me what I want to hear. You get to keep your fingers and toes, so no more torture. Instead, you're getting a lethal injection, he said quietly. Are you sure about? Sure about dying? Yeah. Especially if it's quick. Wonder if they'll give me a last meal. Could go for a persimmon cake. She began to salivate and could almost taste it from the recall. She'd had it only once, years ago, before she was captured by scouts and imprisoned by Orochimaru. It was of the few things she remembered of home that wasn't blotted out by her experiences in the Hibi-Sanin service. Was gonna ask if you're sure about the locations I could find Sasuke. Eh? She'd made a mistake. She offered information without being asked. Worse yet, it had given something away about herself, something that was happening increasingly and alarmingly often around the blonde. She did damage control by brushing it off to make her aforementioned details not seem important. Yeah, it's accurate. You said that no one knows I'm alive. Then fine. They won't move or abandon any of the bases. Keep an eye out for traps, especially for pressure plates for long corridors. Pick your fights. He nodded absently, and she could easily imagine the boy falling into a pit of punji spikes, and she sighed, unable to figure out why she cared. In fact, just take the info and think of bases as landmines and to not go near them. You sure you're not concerned? Tayuya sneered at his lack of tact. Okay, don't listen to me. Get yourself killed. Like I care. Would be a great I told you so, but we'd both be dead anyway. You could be more optimistic, he grumbled. If you're around to see me bring him back, it'd be a bigger I told you so from me. He chuckled. I'd like that. Well, too bad. I want out of this shitty life as soon as possible. The boy's mirth left quickly. Is having a purpose really that important to you, or your success rate? It's not how I was raised, how I was taught, she admitted easily. It's just something I've always believed. It's what kept me going for so long. Her voice was sullen and low. It's the same for everyone. At some point, everyone thinks like that, but I always have. People are meant to be used, and their usefulness determines their worth. If they're not, then they're better off being dead, or at least out of your life. There's only so much you can do living your own life without dragging around other people's problems and carrying their bullshit on your shoulders. And if I don't die, that'd make me a hypocrite, and that's one thing no one should ever call me out on. I don't think like that. Everyone that Naruto had ever met had their own set of beliefs, their ninja way, but he didn't have one that specifically countered Tayuya's. He'd always felt that he should keep his promises, pursue ambitions, and never give up, things that wouldn't debate well against her. Isn't there anything you wanted to do? That could be your purpose. And think of anything, piss for brains. As always, he ignored her common name for him. A couple of days back, she had specified that the spikes of his hair looked like the shocking splatter of urine against a wall or uneven ground, and he'd never quite forgotten the mental image since. What if someone told you to do something? Since obeying Orochimaru and acing his missions were so important, then it means that if I told you to do something, you'd listen and do it. Gonna tell me to live? She asked sarcastically. Was gonna ask you to wait until I came back with Sasuke. If I could bring him back, then maybe there could be a way for you to be released. I'd have fixed the problem you caused. She wondered if he liked her. She didn't think that she'd done anything to deserve it, nor did she want his pity. Didn't he know enough to keep his enemies at range and not try to help them? I assisted Orochimaru to kill your previous Hokage, you know, with the barrier. How could you fix that? The far more serious issue. He looked away from her intense stare. I don't know. He lapsed into deep thought, avoiding her observing gaze, one which told her everything about what the boy was feeling. You're clingy, piss for brains. Just let it happen. Don't you have enough friends to bother? He was quiet. Suddenly. There were times when I was suicidal too. She was taken aback by this. It was news, sure, but he didn't look the type, seeming so happy-go-lucky. I'm an orphan. He searched for a cover-up reason. Not even his friends knew the details, and neither would she. An orphan from day one. I've got bad things in my history. People didn't like having me around. They wished I'd just die in a ditch or just straight up vanish. Came close a couple of times to ending it all. But in the end, I still made friends. They made a difference in my life and they helped keep me going. I can't give you a purpose or a reason to live. I want to help because I want to pass on the favor. They tried with me and because they did, I have to try with others too. I want to try it with you, Tayuya-chan. Not even if we're enemies, I don't want you to die. Not enemies. I'm a prisoner. This was her only response and her way of avoiding answering everything else he just unloaded on her. She sighed, feeling emotionally drained, too tired for acid. Thinking back on all their conversations, their exchanges, his impending departure, she felt that he'd somehow bonded to her and she needed to send him off because she might have done the same. Listen, Whiskers. You have the maps, I tried my best with them, and you have my notes, it's everything I know. You'll find Sasuke. You'll find Orochimaru too, but you're just looking for your grave. You won't give up, but nothing I say is gonna change your mind. You're right. I'm going, and I'll bring him back. Then that's fine. That'll be your purpose, she mumbled, having a feeling that it'd end in disaster. She'd had the same kind of feeling when she'd gone on the mission to retrieve Sasuke. Now, look where it had gotten her. Experience was my best teacher, and I can give you some advice. Don't pack and carry all your clothes. You're growing, despite being a runt. He exclaimed in annoyance, but she yelled over him. Don't interrupt. Always carry a storage seal of animal fluids. Shit, piss, semen, doesn't matter. It helps to throw off scents if you can't outrun people who are chasing you, just spill it around. You use clones. Don't make them fight barehanded, it's a fucking waste. They're only as good as you are. Improve yourself, then they'll follow. 0 plus another 100 zeros is still 0. If you can raise yourself to 1, then that's 101. He folded his arms at the insult and frowned. She made good points. He could accept the help and instruction, though it felt extremely unusual coming from her of all people. He couldn't imagine how to thank her without making it weird. It's okay to specialize, but you need to prepare and cover up your weak areas. Figure out why you lose fights the most and fix it. That's the basics. For common sense, don't trust strangers. Don't eat with them. Don't sleep with them. It's asking a lot when you're traveling, but you can avoid it. Sleep alone or with people you trust. Hunt your food, or at least don't buy from the same place twice in the same week. Maintain yourself as soon as your body tells you. You're not spoiling yourself when you eat like a slob, and you're not making yourself sharper by losing sleep to train. Eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty, sleep when you're tired, you don't know when you'll get the chance again. She continued to advise him, and she appreciated the fact that he was listening carefully. Alright. That's it. Now fuck off back to your friends. It's your last day, and you're spending too much time pestering me instead of them. The goodbyes exchanged at the table were hollow and unrequited, but Naruto waved goodbye to her at the door all the same. Are you still here? She spat, wearing her usual scowl. When are you taking the lethal injection? He queried, knowing it'd be left up to her preference. Maybe tomorrow morning or afternoon. It's the mood. I'm hoping to kill number 17 in the cell next to mine before I go, though. Do this shitty village a favor, cause no one's gonna miss him. He grinned widely, a boyish and charming thing. I think I'm gonna miss you, Tayuya-chan. The thought of being missed, the feeling of being wanted around, made Tayuya's heart lurch. If you run into Kabuto, she ad-libbed, make sure you tell him we all knew about his torture fetish. Naruto's face curdled into horror and disgust, but Tayuya only smiled. It's a death sentence, I know. He won't let you live to talk about it. Your problem now. Don't you have a filter? He screamed. Never. Sayonara, Whiskers. Good riddance. The charming smile he had from before was replaced with a sad one, and the girl was careful to guard her countenance from betraying what she felt, wanting to sever whatever ties they had acrimoniously so that no attachments would remain. She waited until he left before her face fell and allowed herself to be unchained and escorted back to her cell without resistance. Time passed more slowly now. She spent the seemingly never-ending day and night thinking of deadly needles and Naruto, who wasn't coming back in the morning. She wondered if she should have been more honest with him. It'd be only one time, and the only time when it would be understandable and excusable. Bitch found her sleep starved the next morning and had the decency to not harass her straight away like she usually did. Instead, she just leaned against a wall across from the cell and looked down at the girl on the cot. Got word from the higher-ups. You wanted an execution today, lethal injection. You wouldn't be the first one to beg for death, but usually, we're the ones who make him beg for it. Not giving you that satisfaction, bitch. Besides, you don't know if I would have begged anyway outside of not wanting it in the first place. And you and your lot haven't done a thing or even suggested something that could break anyone, much less me. It's mostly an annoyance. I'm in more pain just trying to get to the toilet. Every time it feels like I'm breaking my legs like glass all over again. She didn't mention that it was even more painful exiting the dungeon and seeing Naruto every time he came. Enko laughed. They all think the torture's lame at first. Your curse mark messes up the mental techniques too much, so normally I would have gotten the chance to try something physical. We used to do bamboo bed, where we pin you down and allow bamboo shoots to grow through you for days, but it takes too long if time is an issue. Instead, we just strap you to a bed of nails, back down. Every time you don't cooperate, we put a weight on your belly. With a mouth like yours, you would have ended up bored. Her eyes widened. Shit, I knew you guys had a unique torture method. I think water country is in the lead, though. Getting slowly boiled alive seems like the worst. Anko nodded in agreement. We could still do it if you're up to it. No one said that we had to be particular by nation. Everyone borrows from each other from time to time. When Tayuya didn't answer, Anko grinned. So, how was the break? Have fun. More hidden leaf bullshit. I didn't need you drawing it out. She tried to upright herself in the cot and sucked air sharply when one of her legs banged against the edge before it hung over. Fuck. She screeched. Waiting on her fit to settle, Tayuya glared at the woman. What do you want? Do you think I was gonna tell him thanks for coming? The more you visit, the less they torture me. He never would have left and I would have been stuck with him. So you gave up the info just so he'd get you executed? That's just raw bullshit. You could have told me and I would have killed you right after. Anko shrugged. All the worst and obvious torture methods got postponed because we didn't need to scar the brat. And would he come so often? He knew that and he was trying to keep you from getting maimed. You'll have to forgive him, though. He's young. Let him be like that a little longer. Tayuya spat. He really is sheltered. Enko shrugged. Tayuya caught on to the system of Konoha through faraway observation very quickly. The latest generations all are, in my opinion. All of this is an adult's job. Well, I don't think we should, I also think it's okay. Having them being youthfully exuberant and unblackened by people like you makes this village a hell of a lot less gloomy. Still didn't stop you from trying, did you? Trying to force him to see things your way. I probably did more to help him than anyone else in this hick village ever could. Better you wake up now at home than wake up screaming later. All of a sudden, there was a low slapping-esque noise coming from the cell next to Tayuya's, and the girl's eye twitched. You sick bastard. She yelled, pounding her fist against the wall. I'm tired of your fuckery. And you have some decency and wait until people are asleep. I don't think that he's thinking of you, Tayuya, Anko said with a laugh. It became hysterical as she realized that Tayuya of all people was telling someone else to be decent. Reports say that he does it when I'm around. Guess someone likes me. The prisoner admitted that it made sense. She thought number 17 was doing it to her, but the times made sense because Anko was around then, too. Well, if you didn't dress like a slut. I'll take care of it later. Gonna take away his spanking rights and just cut it off, she replied, half joking and half serious. The noise stopped instantly and Tayuya laughed raucously. Yeah. Do it. With a bread knife. I'll be your best friend if you do. I won't be around to enjoy the peace and quiet, but at least his lonely nights are gonna get even lonelier. I'm touched that you're getting offended for my sake. Speaking of other people's sake, I feel like I should let you know that the kid passed by early this morning. About what you said, not being around for peace and quiet. That's funny. The kid said to tell you that he's gonna write you letters when he can. Say what? Tayuya was confused. Why? I'll be dead. That doesn't make any sense. Their info is incredible until they find Sasuke. Guess you've been my problem for a few years. What? She yelled, we had a deal. Me and him. I give up the info on Sasuke, you end my life. What's wrong with you bunch tree-hugging pacifist cunt holes? But you could be lying, Naruto said. Guess he's not that dense, is he? Tayuya gaped in shock. No. Yep, Anko said, laughing cheerily. You got outsmarted. Tough. Motherfucking whiskers, the girl groaned. He played a wonderful game. He'd allow her to die, but he purposefully wrangled a way to make sure she lived for as long as it took for him to track Sasuke. And to think she had insisted on him to forget about Sasuke. At the very least, she lives for at least another 3 years. I have to wait for his I told you so. That's selfish. And believe I have to hope that he finds the Uchiha as soon as possible. You dug that grave, not me. You'll get to lie in it eventually. I told him that I wanted to die. Why won't he let me? You lot won't even let me do it myself. Would it be a bad time to say that according to him, he won't allow any of his friends to die? Guess you made an impact on him after all. Might not be what you wanted, but that's how it goes. He's selfish like that. Anko scratched her cheek, wondering how best to explain. The number one, hyperactive knuckle-headed ninja outsmarted you with a bit of common sense. How did you not think of that? The girl was uncharacteristically silent. Instead of giving a toxic ad-lib, as was her way, she recalled how much she'd appreciated the sudden visit of a cat when she was jailed by Orochimaru. A meager creature, it had crept in through some crevice, searching for food. It was usually around their few mealtimes when there was a better chance of risking getting fed than getting eaten. It had stuck to Tayuya a lot, despite her abrasion to it at first. It became an endearing comfort to look forward to in the slow-feeded conditions, as she trained herself, as best she could in the privacy of her own cell. At the last, it perished when it changed into a general population brawl instead of the custom of Tayuya's cell, and she had been upset when she found its carcass later, just as it got picked up for meat by another prisoner. Wonder if that moron's gonna be okay, she whispered. Anko overheard, and in her mind, went over the report that she'd read on the Uzumaki. Being a leader in the interrogations and torture department, she had to know what kind of person was visiting the retreated Kunoichi. It was a bizarre record, and despite her uncertainty of why he'd do so, she could grasp that the boy had a strange charisma that magnetized people to him, both enemies and friends alike. He's been through worse. And it'll keep getting stacked on him, more and more tribulations from the ninja world. We know what it's like. Tell him or don't, but he'll find out for himself soon enough. A lot of us like the kid for who he is. He always delivers on what he says, his promises and such, and we all like to see him succeed. It's because of that why we want to see how he turns out. Whiskers said he's gonna bring back Sasuke. Can you believe it? Yeah, I do. Kids never let us down yet. So your executions are still guaranteed, Anko said matter-of-factly. I guess even if it didn't come to that, I kinda get what you're talking about. And I guess I would like to see when he does it. This admittance felt strange coming from her, and for the first time, realized that she hadn't said if the boy would succeed, but, as when, a foregone conclusion. So, she did like the blonde. She thought she was becoming attached to Whiskers all over again, but this was different. Instead of a scruffy mangy cat, a person came by trying to get help to find his friend. He got the help, but he'd gotten her out of her torture, tried to help her see the better side of life, and didn't want to allow her to die, despite how unwelcome that prospect was. You might not have a purpose, but I guess you're gonna have to put up with living, just like you had to put up with Orochimaru and everything else. She tried biting her tongue. Before her teeth punctured it, she waited on the seals to kick in, and she was forced to stop. Anko smiled like the cat that ate the canary when she realized what the girl had tried to do, and it only served to make the prisoner more irate. Ugh. Guess I have to put up with you, bitch. That's bitch sama to you. Anko left, heading into the cell next door, making the inmate yell in alarm. As Tayuya was subjected to listening to the man's shrieks, she started to think of the seals as a good thing, instead of being a customary pain in the arse. She couldn't trust herself anyway to not suddenly end it all on a whim. She felt lonely, it was a wicked hand that the boy had played, coming into her life, and quietly leaving just as abruptly. Although he'd eventually come back, she wished she had properly told him goodbye instead of her usual scathing. She'd get over it. He'd be back. For, as long as she'd be allowed to, she would subsist on his and the least suffocating and pacifistic kindness that she didn't know she needed. This wasn't the worst jail she'd been in, for sure. It was ironically the best one, and it was in here that she was willing to wait. Like everyone else, Tayuya wanted to see how Naruto Uzumaki would turn out. Naruto's eyes opened, just barely. He continued to breathe slowly, just enough to give the facade of sleep without making himself conspicuous and uncomfortable. Not moving his head, he glanced around the room for what he could see and used his spatial awareness and perception to learn the rest. The woman was moving about in the semi-dark room, which was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming in through the 3 windows on the walls. The boy continued to watch her. He already knew that she was a civilian, both he and Jiraiya had figured that out from her non-existent presence of utilizable chakra levels and how she carried herself. Moreover, for one of the two who had particular tastes and interests, she also carried herself like a prostitute. Jiraiya hadn't fooled around with her on account of only being able to rent a single room for the night, but they still slept together in the same bed. Something about research and body heat, the man had said with his usual perverted airs. The weather was cold enough for it to be a decent enough excuse, but Naruto wasn't buying the lecher's reasons, not now, not ever. He was also told to get lost, but the boy had obstinately refused to leave, so the man couldn't do anything without Naruto knowing unless he did something cunning. So, Naruto had effectively blocked the man, though he hadn't slept a wink himself. He recalled what the prisoner had told him about strangers, so he was keeping up a watch. Sure enough, the woman was up and active. What the hell was the woman doing? He watched her try to move around quietly in her bare feet, but to him, she still made too much noise. She was definitely no ninja. She turned to face him and observed him. Naruto didn't move. Also to his benefit, she couldn't see the whites of his eyes because of how narrowed they were. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was completely plastered from a night of drinking, and he snored like a drowning bull. She was satisfied. By moonlight, she put on her sleek dress, ran her hand through her hair to straighten it. Personal appearances apparently dealt with, she then searched the dresser, the small wardrobe, and Jiraiya's pack on the floor. She kept rooting, so Naruto guessed she hadn't found what she was looking for. He did, however, suspect what she was looking for. She searched the man's pack until she found it. It was a money purse. It was too thick for her to conceal in her pockets, so she took out what appeared to be a large wad of the cash inside and thrust it into her ample bosom before adjusting her bra to make sure it wouldn't slip through. It wasn't all the money, but Naruto was sure it was more than what she would have charged for her priciest services and that she was leaving Jiraiya with just a pittance. He didn't know what to feel. He felt that it would be a lesson well earned for the man if she got away with the money, but it was also a situation that could be easily diffused simply by acting. Having rested earlier in the day and being awake now, all of this had been possible simply by following all of Tayuya's pieces of advice. They had come in handy on the trip more often than not, but for all the help they were, he couldn't understand why his teacher didn't seem to enact them on his own or care for them. Wasn't he mature as a ninja? Was Tayuya more mature than Jiraiya? He doubted that her advice was precise and specifically tailored for him, but actually common sense. She said so herself, for at least most of them. He sweat dropped at the discovery. Did that mean that Jiraiya lacked common sense? He shouldn't judge, though he had a right to. Naruto was sure that the man had to be aware. He couldn't live to get to his age without being sharp. He was also powerful and wise. But mature and established. Maybe like the Sandaime. Even a bit more like Tsunade would have been nice. A part of him wished that he had been taught by Tsunade. She was powerful. Naruto fumed mentally at his teacher's ineptitude and his failings. Trying to rid his mind of thoughts of his teacher, he presently watched a woman leave, picking up her shoes on the way out the door. She was about to leave the inn. His time of opportunity and choice was dwindling. He hesitated. No, piss for brains, don't hesitate, he could hear Tayuya say, go after her. If the stupid snoring fucker is the one feeding you, then that means she's getting away with your dinner. Naruto realized that his mind went to the prisoner back in Konoha frequently. He thought about her a lot. It had been 3 or 4 months since he last saw her. He wondered if she was doing better. Have her legs healed? Did she hate him for postponing her execution? In the underground prison. You left me trapped in a box in the ground. Last I checked, that's for dead people, morons. Sounded like something she'd say. Yes, she'd be angry. The woman was getting away. Naruto sighed. Guess I'll go after her. Rolling sideways out of the bed, he quickly pulled on his sandals and headed to the window. Opening it, he got on the ledge and looked out. The woman was already going up the street. She's pretty fast, he muttered. Leaping out the window onto the veranda ceiling of the inn, he then jumped to the next rooftop, then another. Keeping quiet, he finally dropped down in front of the fleeing woman, scaring her out of her wits. "Okami!" she exclaimed as she fell backwards on her part. Studying the form that had seemingly landed out of the heavens, she realized it was the same boy who had been in the man's company. "It's you. What do you want?" She was loud in a sort of whispery way, not wanting to draw attention or awaken other sleepers in the buildings on the street in the wee hours of the morning. She got up and looked at the boy defiantly. Naruto thought she was brave to be giving a ninja so much attitude, though he was admittedly used to worse. It must have been because he was so young. Naruto scratched his chin and thought, what do I want? He wasn't completely sure. At first, he was chasing after the woman who had robbed his sensei, but this woman wasn't exactly paid, either. He probably shouldn't take it all from her. Regardless of that, he had no idea how much she was obligated to get. Tayuya would be sure to say something about survival of the fittest. Wait. Jiraiya would know the right amount, right? I need you to come back to the inn with me. You need to make a change. You took too much. Showing so much integrity was admirable, but lessened the boy's previously daunting image in the woman's eyes. She told him that she took the right amount. Naruto insisted that she had to. No, it's the truth. She refuted. Trying to raise her appeal to him to sway him more to her side, she had leaned forward to show more of her cleavage. Come on, would I lie to you? she whispered, her tone sleek and sweet as dripping honey. She knew she was attractive, a brunette beauty with full breasts and long legs, with the curves to round everything out. She could easily tempt the lad who was probably inexperienced with women. Naruto, on the other hand, who was his master's student in name only and not in vice, stared at the stupid woman who had the gall to show him where she concealed the money in her bosom. Walking forward, the boy stuck his hand between her breasts and took the money, shocking the woman and leaving her flabbergasted. What the fuck are you doing? Give that back. The boy grumbled heatedly about the foolishness that his teacher was putting him through regularly as he shoved the roll of bills into his pocket. I'll take the money back to him by myself so you can wait here. Or you can come back. It's your pay, after all. If you want it that badly, then come get it. I'm all for being fair, but you're not gonna rob us blind. Give it back right now. That's my money. If you don't hand it over, I'll scream and bring everyone running. She threatened. You could scream. Or Naruto squinted at the woman, still just muddling his way through the situation as best he could. You could not scream. I mean, it takes a special kind of idiot to rob a ninja. I'm trying to be nice. He could hear Tayuya's voice berate him and for once was glad that she wasn't out of prison to see him make a fool of himself. She warned him about being too nice to survive in the ninja world, and so had Jiraiya. He paused. He went through his last thought process and again and another dozen times before finally having an epiphany. He looked at the woman intensely, who appeared as if she was getting ready to make good on her claim, and screamed. His glare was enough to stop her pre-attempt. Why should I help you? He exclaimed in his epiphany, you're wrong. You could have stayed until morning and got the right pay. You knew what you were getting into. But you didn't even bother to ask for money before you started. You're just a thief and you planned on robbing us the whole time. We didn't treat you badly. You just stole the money without even stopping to consider us, and you're not even sorry about it. It's already enough that I'm letting you go. Don't rob anyone anymore. You might not be so lucky next time, he warned. In fact, I dare you to come back to try to collect your pay from us. With that, he left the woman by leaping up to the nearest roof and dashed back to the inn. He entered through the same window from which he'd left only a few minutes before, went to his bed and tugged off his sandals. He realized that Jiraiya was awake, peering at him intently. He was sitting up as if he'd been waiting for Naruto's return. Naruto didn't accept any of this. Moreover, it only made him more upset. How long were you awake? Why didn't you stop her? I was going to do it myself, but I decided to let you handle it since you were so eager. You haven't slept a wink all night, have you? Naruto ignored his observation. You cut it close. She was almost at the top of the street. Doesn't matter if you could track her down, she could have gotten rid of it anywhere between here and then. You underestimate me, brat, but that's a good point, Jiraiya admitted. Now hand over the money. I ought to keep some of it, or most of it. Pay for cleaning up your mess. Besides, you keep hassling me for my money anyway. He sat down on his bed and crossed his arms in annoyance. You could keep it and I won't teach you any. It's always been an easy strategy to hold a carrot over the boy's head. This time, however, Naruto could care less if it was a bluff or not, he was fed up. I've been meaning to ask you about that. I haven't really learned anything since we started the trip. Hell, we even learned more when we were back in Konoha and looking for Granny Tsunade. All we've done is stomp around. If I wanted to learn how to write porn, I'd follow you anywhere. As it stands now, maybe Kakashi-sensei at least would be more helpful. Naruto looked away. I had the Rasengan. Kakashi-sensei taught Sasuke the Chidori, and he beat me. Doesn't that mean that he's a better teacher than you? Jiraiya frowned. Naruto was in one of his worst moods. If that wasn't enough, he'd just hurt his own esteem while utterly destroying Sanen's ego in the process. The boy knew what he did, and the ramifications were farther reaching than his allowable ignorance should permit. He wanted to nip it in the bud. Kid, that's the Yondames. I lost to Sasuke. Naruto yelled vehemently, flailing his arms in frustration. I'm supposed to find him. Instead, all I've done is walk behind you, go into bars, watch you get robbed every so often, and put up with your pervy peeping in bathhouses. I haven't learned a single thing in 4 months. Meanwhile, time's running out for Sasuke, and I bet that he's getting better, training, and learning. Are you trying to sabotage me? Naruto felt weak, as if something was breaking down inside of him. Do you have any idea what I'm going through? My best friend, gone. He stabbed me in my chest. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to save him from Orochimaru, and I can't even rely on you. Then what the hell am I doing out here? If he didn't wake up everyone in the inn by now, they must have been dead. The innkeeper was probably one noise complaint away from kicking them out. Naruto angrily threw the wad of cash at the man's head, where it bounced off his cheek and fell to the floor. I've been out here for 4 months now. The bit of training I get to do when we're not moving is just Taijutsu and some ordinary strength training. It's not enough, Tayuya-chan said so, and I believe her. Jiraiya had noticed the boy's training, but it elected not to say anything instead, he merely listened. It's what I've always done, and Sasuke beat me, and Kamimura nearly killed me. So I know it's true. Naruto, you can't just take everything that anyone says at face value, especially some enemy Kunoichi that we captured. You beat others, haven't you? What about Gaara? You've got a summoning. The fat lot of help it's done. Jiraiya kissed his teeth. Ungrateful brat. He wanted to sound disassociated with the boy, but couldn't help but feel concerned. You must be really impressionable. Maybe letting you see this girl was a mistake. Maybe it was a mistake, Naruto replied, not entirely sure himself what the answer was. But it looks bad when an enemy Kunoichi with a death sentence does more to help me with advice in 5 minutes than what a Sannin has done in 4 months. That's the truth. She just gave me advice because she thought I was a fool and she pitied me, but deep down, I believe that she does want to help me. I've gotten stronger and faster. I'm better rested. I'm more confident. I feel more aware. I can monitor you when things are going bad because of your bad habits. Just now, I normally would have been asleep. Or maybe I'd have caught up with a lady just now, only for her to sweet talk me into letting her go or something. So I look bad, eh kid? The man said resignedly. Really bad, Naruto blurted, twisting the knife deeper into the man's ego. I don't care anymore about what kind of leadership or power you have to carry me on this so-called training trip, he said, the last dripping with sarcasm. I'll just go back home in the morning. Naruto lied down and settled, as if getting ready to sleep. Jiraiya heard the boy mumble something about waste of time, presumably a description of the trip. The man was sure that he could easily wrench the situation into his favor by dangling a promise in front of the boy right now, but further consideration made the man conclude that it'd do more harm than good because Naruto believed that all of his promises were empty. Even if he did deliver, it'd just spoil Naruto into thinking he could cuss him until he got his way anytime he wanted. Naruto, at heart, was a person of sincerity and greatly appreciated it in others through words and actions. But what could he say otherwise in his defense? The boy was mostly right. They hadn't done anything that would be useful to him in a fight. Exposing him to various social scenes to improve how he carried himself couldn't help him fight Akatsuki, and while he drilled the boy to try to master the Rasengan with one hand, he was still 2 hands off for the boy's liking. Look, kid. I'm sorry. Sorry about your training and Sasuke. Truth is, he's a lot like Orochimaru. You know, he was my former friend and teammate. Left the village and turned out all wrong, all of that. I didn't hold out much hope about anyone rescuing him, much less you. He's where Orochimaru is, and that's not a person for experienced genins to fight, much less a green genins. Naruto's ears perked up. This was a term that Tayuya had used before. Fine. I'll let him be for now. I won't say I am going after him, though, cause I don't want that sicko to take his body. But you under watch later, fine, Jiraiya grumbled. But I was going to train you for 2.5, maybe for a full 3 years. It was enough time to get you up to above decent. That's not good enough. I'm willing to train, as hard as I can, to be better. Isn't this trip only about training me? Not completely. I still have to maintain my spy network and keep watch for Akatsuki. I have to keep our allies in the loop too, about their movements, members, and their goals. Then fine. The boy cried, as he sat up in his bed, trying to salvage any hope for getting stronger. Train me for as long as you can, whenever you can, as often as you can. If you have to leave me alone for any amount of time, give me instructions to improve what I have, or how to practice. I managed to learn tree walking and water walking on my own after I was told how to, haven't I? I learned the Rasengan too, and you weren't always around then. But so far this time, you haven't really done anything except get drunk and drive me crazy. This was easy to concede. When the boy wanted to learn, nothing could stop him or lower his determination. He had a knack for pulling off difficult masteries with clever workarounds whenever necessary, before perfecting it later. He was a great student, and Jiraiya had to acknowledge the fact. Any teacher would love him. Naruto could and would be a great shinobi, as long as he was provided with the right tutelage. I won't stop drinking, and you know that women can't keep their hands off of me, but I'll do better. I'll step up. Naruto's sweat dropped. You mean you can't keep your hands off of them? I'll step up, the Sannin repeated, even more seriously this time, as he leaped to his feet in a familiar stance. Can't let some potty-mouth prisoner be a better teacher than the great legendary Toad Sage of Mount. Shut up, you moron. Someone yelled in from the next room through the wooden walls. People are trying to sleep. I've got work in the morning. The moment and the effect ruined, Jiraiya sighed, as he flung himself back into his bed, trying to piece together what remained of his ego. Naruto laughed at the silliness of it all, now looking forward to the training that the Sannin had promised. Hiro Sennin. If you think that's bad now, I hope you never meet Tayuya-chan, he said with a chuckle, because she'd tear you apart. The man didn't reply. He just, for a moment, wondered about the girl who had seemingly followed them on the training trip. It appeared that the personality exposure, the bits of advice, and her notes that she gave Naruto did wonders for his performance and awareness of the world around him. What are you planning on doing when we're done? He asked quietly, trying to the boy's brains. Done? You mean finish training and go back to the village? Naruto queried as he glanced at the man before getting a nod. I think I want to bring Tayuya-chan outside. I bet she'd like it. He let himself fall back on his bed, head hitting the pillow, and in doing so, missed Jiraiya's muted astonishment. She won't admit it and she'll probably come up with a new way to insult me, but I think she'd like being outside for even a little while. He looked down, suddenly feeling bashful. Seems to me like she must have always been in a prison or on some crap mission. It would be nice to be able to go outside for no reason at all. Legalities aside, as well as doubts about actually freeing her, Naruto felt it was the right thing to do. Jiraiya allowed himself a small smile. The boy had somehow gone through changes while not even actually changing at all. Tell you what. You stick to the training and everything that I'm gonna put you through, I think we'll make a proper ninja that can get anything done. At Sasuke back, scare Orochimaru, flatten the Akatsuki, and maybe it's a stretch just maybe get that girl to show you some respect haha, piss for brains. Naruto's side-eye stared at the man from his own bed. Besides the qualms about Jiraiya finding out about the girl's common name for him, as well as the various others, he felt that it was more hers than for anyone else to use. Like pet names. Regardless, he understood what the man was driving at. Finally, he couldn't wait until morning. Yeah. You bet. The end. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.